Jazakallah khairan, Shakeel. We have some time for a few questions, inshallah ta'ala, but we have to be quick because the football's leaving soon. So inshallah, if you can ask directly, inshallah ta'ala, based on the topic, if the sisters have any questions, they can write it down and send it on a piece of paper, inshallah ta'ala. So, the brother has a question.
The question is, how do you interact with these brothers? Because one problem is that, for example, in university, they tell brothers not to go to certain talks because that speaker is not on the manhaj and so on. And they keep a lot of brothers that are new into being from not going to those talks and things like that. How do you deal with things like that?
Question Brother Fuad asked, sometimes you come across people and they say, look, don't go to certain circles, don't go to certain speakers, these speakers are of the manhaj. So how do you interact with these individuals? When we were preparing and discussing this, we discussed whether we should really have it and we shouldn't. So there was a discussion, especially between myself and Brother Ilyas, whether we should do it. And the general approach has been where you teach the fundamentals and you teach the principles. And when principles and fundamentals are understood, the truth becomes clear to people and they follow the truth, and you mention the statements of the ulama. But what we have found, that it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. People are not on a level to understand, general principles. So sometimes you might say, look, كُلٌّ يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ قَوْلِهِ وَيُرَدْ, the statement of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Everyone, you can state this statement and reject it except the Prophet ﷺ. So you tell a brother, look, don't blind follow this particular scholar or this particular person. You can take his statement, reject it, but stick to Qur'an and Sunnah. It doesn't work. People have gone into this calamity and really messed up, and caused so much division, not just outside the ranks of what we call the Salafi movement, but within the Salafi movement you will find 3, 4, maybe more groups, each one at loggerheads. So it is a fitnah that now we need to be, strong enough, open enough, clear enough to say right is right, wrong is wrong. And if somebody is saying, this person is wrong, he has mistakes of the manhaj, where's the proof? What has that person said? What has that person done? We're not saying that, that you can't say that this person is wrong, because, within Islam there is, people who have deviated from the right guidance. And Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd rahimahullah has a book, Al-Raddu ala al-Mukhalif min Usul al-Islam. To refute the person who differs with the fundamentals of the deen is part of the fundamentals of the deen. So that's part, it's there in Islam. But it has to be within the confinements and the boundaries of Qur'an and Sunnah. So if you find these brothers are behaving in this fashion, contradicting the Qur'an and Sunnah, contradicting the way of the Prophet and his companions, contradicting the way of the ulama, they need to be advised. They need to be advised and they need to be reprimanded. They shouldn't be given positions where they are going to spread that corruption and that filth in terms of causing division, causing disunity, and causing the spread of misunderstanding upon the Muslims. So we need to take a strong stance concerning it, inshallah.
Any other questions for Didi?
Quick question. Can you just say again the Shari meanings of jihad?
Fighting in the path of Allah, the enemies of Islam. Yeah.
So what's the question for the sisters?
Question was, what's the Shari'i definition of jihad? So we said the linguistic definition that it's a struggle. Okay, from jahada, yajhudu, from that linguistic definition, but it has a Shari'i definition, a religious definition, which is referring to physically fighting in the path of Allah subhanahu. Where do we get these in terms of rewards of the mujahid? If it was just a struggle and we die sitting in London, in UK, and just we die, can we say that when our blood spills, that the first drop of that blood, all the sins are forgiven, that we'll get, intercede for 70 members of our family, those encourage us towards jihad, that there will be no punishment of the grave, that there will be in the hearts of green birds in Jannah, that all our sins will be forgiven? No. So it's not the struggle, the inner struggle that we go through every day that it's referring to. It's referring to physically fighting, and then there's specific rewards attached to it. So Allah Ta'ala even فَضَّلَ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ عَلَى الْقَائِدِينَ mentions that Allah has preferred those who make jihad over those who are sitting. Those who are sitting have a struggle in terms of salah, in terms of da'wah, and some of other things, but those who fight have a higher status than those who do not fight. So it's referring to specific struggle, which is referring to al-qital.
So the saying Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, most of the people will be, they'll be shaheed from the beds, they'll be shaheed in the beds, or something like that.
Shaheed in their beds?
Yeah, something like
I haven't come across it, akhi, Allah knows the best.
I think in the last two books, the most of the...
It's in Jami' al-Ulum, it's in Rajab, it's Hadith Musnad Ahmad.
Mm-hmm.
There's some weakness in that hadith though.
Mm-hmm.
It means the people that died upon the intention of pure intention of jihad, because he brings it in the sharh of Innamal A'malu bin-Niyyat.
MashaAllah.
So that's the place for it.
He's mentioning the understanding of Brother Yusuf. Yeah?
I looked in the Takhrij, so there's some weakness in it, but the meaning is from the Niyya.
So I mean, it also with the hadith of the Prophet وَمَنْ لَمْ يَغْزُو وَلَمْ يُحَدِّثْ نَفْسَهُ بِالْغَزْوِ مَعَ عَلَى شُعْبَةٍ مِنَ النِّفَاقِ. The one who doesn't make ghazwa, i.e. take part in battles, doesn't have the intention to do so, he dies upon a branch of hypocrisy. So at least the Muslim should have that niyyah of struggling and fighting and sacrificing himself for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Going back to the definition of Salafi, how do you relate that to the four madhabs that major Muslims follow, and how do they see themselves in terms of calling themselves Salafi to the full exclusion of, say, Hanafi or Shafi'i or Maliki?
Well, this is another problem. But Tawfiq's question was, those who call themselves or attach themselves to certain madhabs, and how are they related to in terms of those who call themselves Salafi. This is another complicated issue that people have made, to a major issue. Now, the four Imams, some of them will form the Salaf themselves, and nearly every scholar that came after them attached himself to a particular madhab in terms of studying and learning. And the greatest ones, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Hanbali, Sheikh Muhammad Wahab, Hanbali, even the present day scholars initially, started off in terms of learning the Hanbali madhab, like Sheikh bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, and so on. So if somebody attaches himself to that way of learning, that I'm a Hanafi, I'm a Shafi'i, in terms of learning and gaining knowledge of fiqh and jurisprudence, can we say he's a deviant because of this? No. So that's why, what we mentioned initially, there is a cultish mentality that has spread, and it's very, divisive and very, causing a lot of corruption and fitnah. So yes, somebody traditionally can be studying a madhab in terms of one of the four madhabs of fiqh and still be following the way of the Prophet and his companions. Yeah, and it has been done.
Professor Qur'an.
As a result, I'm not responsible for the name, should we cease referring to ourselves as Salafi?
Okay, if you look at the approach that some of the Salafi brothers mentioned in terms of, Sunni used to be a term that used to be used, and now many people are using the term Sunni, and they have deviated. You can find many of the Sufis would use the term Ahlul Sunnah and Sunni and so on. So, for us to differentiate from them, we should use the term Salafi. Now, what if others start to use this term? And you'll be surprised how many people are using the term Salafi. There are people who are on the Aqidah of Ash'ari Aqidah, in terms of making ta'wil of names and attributes. Certain elements among Sufis in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca, who use the term Salafi, and they say we are following the way of the Salaf and we are Salafi. Now, if we were out of the cult mentality, what would we do? Because we had an approach to say, look, we've left Sunni because to differentiate between those people who have deviated to call ourselves Salafi. Would we leave the term Salafi now because others are using it and they're not entitled to this term and make another name? No. We would fight for this term, because the term itself has become now itself an issue of what? Wala and bara. So this makes it, dangerous and so on. So that's why it's very good to stick to those terms which are mentioned in Qur'an and Sunnah and Muslim, and which the ulama have used. And even those ulama who have used the term Salafi, they haven't used it in the term of a cultish mentality. They use it as a term of attaching oneself to the early Muslims, i.e. to the Salaf and following their way, not to make yourself into a small group and divide yourself from others and so on. It's an attachment to what? Following the truth and the early Muslims.